Well, that not allowing them to call themselves married hurts themselves and hurts their children and hurts their status in their communities. But if we allow them to call themselves married, all these terrible things are going to happen. It's ridiculous.
Couldn't you have just avoided all of this if you had just said, well, gay people, lesbians have the same legal rights in civil unions, and you wouldn't have stirred up this crowd, would you?
Well, yes, they'd get stirred up anyway, but if the American people would just listen to what the plaintiffs and the other experts said in this case, they will understand so much more. The damage that's done to people that say, you can live together, you may have children, we sort of think it's okay for your relationship to exist, but you can't call yourselves married. So it is a little bit like second class, and your relationship doesn't count, and you don't count. You know, that is demeaning, and if the American people see that, they'll see the difference.
Well, one of the reasons we put the individual plaintiffs on the stand was for the judge and hopefully for the appellate court to see the human face of this discrimination, to see the costs, the pain that this kind of discrimination causes. Because Americans believe in liberty. We believe in equality. It's baked into our soul. The only way that we have engaged in the kind of discrimination that we have historically is by somehow overlooking the humanity of the people that we discriminate against. We did that with African Americans, we did that with Asians, we did that with American Indians, we did that with women. We're doing it with gays and lesbians today. We somehow put out of our mind the fact that we're discriminating against another human being by characterizing them as somehow not like us, not equal to us, not fully human, not a full citizen. And that's what is so pernicious about this campaign.
But this is the first time that state laws banning gay marriage have been challenged in a federal court. No matter who wins, no matter how the judge in San Francisco comes down, it's likely this will be appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you go to the Supreme Court, Ted, you're going to run smack up against some of your best friends. I mean, as you know, when you mentioned that 2003 case when the court outlawed Texas laws against sodomy, Justice Scalia issued a strong, some say virulent dissent. And he said that this decision effectively decrees the end of all morals legislation and would lead to sanctioning same-sex marriages. He went on to accuse his colleagues on the court of aligning themselves with the, quote, homosexual agenda. Let me read you this. This is from Justice Scalia. Many Americans do not want persons who openly engage in homosexual conduct as partners in their business, as teachers in their children's schools, or as boarders in their home. They view this as protecting themselves and their families from a lifestyle that they believe to be immoral and destructive. How, if you get to the court, are you going to deal with your friend Justice Scalia?
Well, and let me say that I have enormous respect for all of the members of the United States Supreme Court. And I've had wonderful relationships in one way or another with all of them. So my friends are not on one side or the other. Secondly, Justice Scalia, he writes beautifully, and he has passionate, powerful views, but he lost. And he went on to say in that very opinion, if we decide this case that way, what's to prevent same-sex marriage from being held to be a constitutional right? Well, he was right. And once you make that decision in that case, and you put it together with the marriage cases, that's the end of it as far as that's concerned. We hope to persuade everyone on that court. Part of what you just read was some people don't want a homosexual to be a teacher in a school. Well, I don't think today hardly anyone would agree that you could make a law that said a person whose sexual orientation is homosexual can't teach in a public school. There was a ballot proposition in California in the 70s, you might remember this, that would have restricted the rights of homosexuals to be teachers in schools. And it was going to pass. It was going to be a major amendment to the California law. And Ronald Reagan came out and said, that's unwise. That will hurt people. That will cause people, teachers, good teachers, to be persecuted. And it went down to defeat.
You know that some of your friends and longtime colleagues, including Charles Cooper, are saying that Ted Olson has turned to the very kind of judicial activism that he's always lamented and opposed, right? Do you understand that they're saying that?
I know they're saying that, some of them to my face. And my answer is, it isn't judicial activism for the Supreme Court to recognize an associational right, a liberty right, and a privacy right for two people who love one another to be married. I don't think it's judicial activism to treat our citizens equally and to require that equality under the law be accorded to all of our citizens. There's a lot of people in this country who have sexual orientation that is different than ours. If we treat them differently, we're hurting them. No one can question that. We're hurting them. We're saying that they're different. Take the time then, if you're going to be a citizen, to read the transcript of this trial and what the experts had to say and what the plaintiffs had to say, and then come to me and tell me that I'm wrong.
But is he practicing judicial activism? You would support it, I know, but is he practicing? Have you won him over to your side?
Have I won him over from the dark side? I think that conservatives, just like liberals, rely on the Supreme Court to protect the rule of law, to protect our liberties, to look at a law and decide whether or not it fits within the Constitution. And I think the point that's really important here when you're thinking about judicial activism is that this is not a new right. Nobody is saying, go find in the Constitution the right to get married. Everybody, unanimous Supreme Court, says there's a right to get married, fundamental right to get married. The question is whether you can discriminate against certain people based on their sexual orientation. And the issue of prohibiting discrimination has never, in my view, been looked at as a test of judicial activism. That's not liberal, that's not conservative, that's not Republican or Democrat. That's simply American constitutional civil rights.
Ted Olson, David Boies, we should do a series discussing the court and law. Thank you both very much for being with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.